Kirk Cousins is much, much more than that, and he is something else because the Falcons quarterback in the headlines today as the premiere of the new docuseries, the second season of Quarterback, came out on Netflix, and Kirk Cousins is all the rage on social media as he looks back on his 2024 season and even the offseason that led him signing with the Atlanta Falcons. Kerry Rhodes, we're going to hear from Cousins in a bit, but when you look back at a season that he tried to come back from an Achilles injury, battled injuries as well, and was ultimately replaced by Michael Penix Jr., I think ultimately you could say it was not a successful season for the veteran quarterback.
It was not a success for him personally, except for the pockets, right? He got a nice little pay raise, so I think that was okay. But as far as playing the way that I'm sure he wanted to, that did not go the way he wanted it to.
And this is what Kirk Cousins had to say, because Kerry is not wrong. It's always been about the pockets, and it's always been about the money with Kirk Cousins. Take a listen to what the Falcons quarterback had to say from Netflix in the new Quarterback docuseries.
Wasn't expecting us to take a quarterback so high. At the time, it felt like I had been a little bit misled, or certainly if I had the information around free agency, it certainly would have affected my decision. I had no reason to leave Minnesota with how much we loved it there if both teams are going to be drafting a quarterback high. But I've also learned in 12 years in this league that you're not entitled to anything. It's all about being able to earn your spot and prove yourself.
No, he said a lot there.
And contradicting as well.
And his actions, would say otherwise. Kirk Cousins laid out, I can understand the first part, feeling misled. I think we were all shocked on draft night when the Atlanta Falcons took Michael Penix Jr. with their first-round pick, just a month after signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million contract.
I think the only reason I was misled in that situation is because of the money, right? Because if you're going to invest that much into a guy, obviously he is your guy. So why would you draft his replacement that high? I was a little bit taken amiss by that.
I think we all were. We were expecting something different. In fact, when you watch the NFL draft and you watch it back and you replay that pick, that's the whoa sort of moment that you say, we were not expecting that. So that part, completely get from that. I feel that there's revisionist history in Minnesota in that he's saying that we could have stayed in Minnesota. It may be true to the aspect of Minnesota wanted him on a 1-year deal.
Yes.
And he alluded it a little bit there that both teams would be drafting high.
Yes.
Well, what's the difference then in signing with the Atlanta Falcons or staying with the Minnesota Vikings on a 1-year deal? This is why Kirk Cousins is lying to you, is because it has always been about the money.
There you go.
It has always been about the money with Kirk Cousins. And if you don't believe me, I've got a list, Kerry, right here of the history of Kirk Cousins in the National Football League. By the way, none of which am I mad at.
Right.
Get your money when you can. Play the game. But don't try to sell me a bill of goods at the other end that doesn't match up with what your history has.
Right.
In 2017, Kirk Cousins, first quarterback in NFL history to be franchise tagged 2 consecutive years. Happened by the then Washington football team, then the Redskins. 2018 signs a fully guaranteed 3-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings worth $84 million. At that time, he was the first player to get a fully guaranteed deal for that much money. Wow. $84 million. Hadn't happened most for any player in NFL history at the time of that signing in 2018. Fully guaranteed 3 years, $84 million. In 2020, you're going to hear the word guaranteed a lot. 2-year extension off of that 3-year deal, 2-year extension worth $66 million with $61 million guaranteed. So all but $5 million were guaranteed. That $5 million also essentially, in reading back over the deal, was basically guaranteed because Minnesota would have been on the hook for an obscene amount of money. They were going to end up paying him the $5 million, but the documents will give him the benefit of the doubt. $66 million, $61 million of that guaranteed. In 2022, signed a 1-year extension off of that other extension that he signed, $35 million fully guaranteed. And then he goes to the Atlanta Falcons in 2024 and signs for 4 years, $180 million with $100 million guaranteed. Kirk Cousins has played the game correctly, but it's always been about the money.
Yes.
When you have a team, by the way, there were the next highest free agent signing besides Kirk Cousins in that free agency class was Gardner Minshew, signing basically a backup quarterback deal.
Right.
There wasn't a market for Kirk Cousins. Him going back to Minnesota would have been the default. It may have been plan B for him, but that's not what he wanted to do. And in fact, I don't think Minnesota wanted him back. I think Minnesota wanted to move on so far from the Kirk Cousins era that they were starting Jaron Hall, a rookie quarterback, in a must-win game against Green Bay in late December on Sunday Night Football, just hoping and hoping and hoping that maybe a rookie quarterback would be able to grab the reins and they could have a quarterback of the future. Failed miserably. Nick Mullins had to take over. This was all because of Cousins' Achilles injury.
Right.
In the end, Minnesota decides we're going to chart our own course. If you want to come back, it's going to be a one-year deal, but we're going to draft a quarterback. You know what Kirk Cousins says? Fine, I'll go somewhere else in only one place, and I'll get $180 million.
Right.
So him telling you that I want to stay back in Minnesota, it would have been better for my family. If the Falcons weren't coming around with a $180 million deal, then, yeah, maybe he would have stayed in Minnesota. But he didn't. You know why? Because Kirk Cousins has always been about the money, and it's why I don't feel bad one bit. The Falcons were actually fined and docked a fifth-round pick because they tampered with Kirk Cousins because they were talking with him so early in the process.
Right.
His wife was reportedly looking at schools for their kids in early March before free agency had even started. I'm sorry, I know I'm worked up over this, but just to hear this story of woe is me and yeah, I was surprised. We all were surprised.
Right.
But let's be real. You took the money because you wanted the money. That's what it was about. It wasn't about leading the Falcons to the Super Bowl. It was because they were going to give you $100 million guaranteed, and there wasn't another team in the NFL that was willing to pay you that. That's what this is all about.
You want to add one more ounce of proof to what you're saying? It's about the money.
Let's hear it.
He's a 2-time participant to the quarterback show. Like, why? Why is he doing that show right now?
Perfect.
Just an added boost for you. There you go, Dan, for your statement. But for him, there's always been a cap on what he could do and what he could be as a player, right? So he's maximized that. I think for him individually, he's had a really, really successful career. Obviously, his time in Minnesota was going to be up. I mean, he wasn't going to be the guy to get them over the hump. And you said it. I mean, there was one more team that was willing to, have him as an expensive stopgap to their next situation. Obviously, we didn't see Michael Penix being that guy that early, with Atlanta drafting him that high. But he wasn't going to be the answer there either. And so I think that was my main, problem with the deal is how much money they gave him, right? The fact that he was able to finesse them for that amount of money is just bonkers.
Yes.
When the deal first came out, it made no sense. First and foremost, he's an aging quarterback. Second, he does have a cap on his talent and what he can do. Third, he's coming off a major Achilles injury. So for him to say anything about anybody doing him wrong in this situation, in this deal, is just kind of asinine.
It is quite the trifecta there, by the way.
Yes.
And so if you are facing all of that stuff that you know and I know and I think that he knows,
right,
and someone says, we'll give you $100 million guaranteed, where do I sign?
Exactly.
Where do I sign? You want me to, do you want me to lift the field goal nets on field goals too when we're kicking field goals? I'll do it for $100 million. Right. Absolutely. You want me to hold the sideline chains when we're not on offense? That's what you do. When you're coming off of that injury, that's what you do. There wasn't a team out there that was willing to give Kirk Cousins that deal. And if it was all about doing what was right, he then maybe would have stayed in Minnesota on that one-year deal. But no, it's always been about the money for Kirk Cousins. So when it backfires on you and you get hurt and you lose your job because they go in a different direction, I don't agree with what the Falcons did, but still, I just have zero empathy or sympathy for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and I actually agree with what Atlanta did. He wasn't playing well at all. So, and I think this is the other part of that conversation. If he played well, he would still be the guy right now. And,
sure.
And even if they drafted Penix, he still would be playing. But he did not live up to even his part of that bargain.
I think it's also easy to point back to Minnesota because of the injury that J.J. McCarthy went through.
Yeah.
And so when you do reference that previous stop if Cousins was still there, maybe he's still in line to be the starter. Maybe there's a quarterback battle this offseason. But again, he got $100 million guaranteed.
Right.
He was with Minnesota. The quarterback series showed him rehabbing in Minnesota. And the next thing you know, he's signing a deal with the Atlanta Falcons for that amount of money, and talking about the roots that they had in the state of Georgia and how excited they were to be there. But again, this was all laid out. The Falcons had him with their trainer in early March. That was the evidence that got busted on the tampering, that he was meeting with a Falcons team doctor to find out how well along his Achilles injury was.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's part of what the NFL docked the Falcons for the tampering of Kirk Cousins during free agency. So when I sit down and I did watch, I fast forward through the Jared Goff and Joe Burrow portions of the first episode because the Kirk Cousins deal was trending. People were talking about it, and I watched it. And he's been a great media person. To your point, who's doing this twice? It's Kirk Cousins is. Yeah. He knows how to play the game. Golly, there's a whole Great Clips sponsorship that's thrown in. Even mentions it in the quarterback thing. And then Adam Schefter's tweeting earlier today, Kirk Cousins and Great Clips have reached this deal where if you're in the Great Clips when Kirk Cousins is getting a haircut, you also get a free haircut. It's all about the money. So don't feel bad when Kirk Cousins can't throw the football to the right team that he's being benched. It's always been about the money for Kirk Cousins, and that's why I just don't buy anything that he says. And it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's what it's about. But don't sit here and tell me how the Falcons wronged you and how you were put in such a tough spot when you got $100 million that no other team in the NFL, including the team you just played for, would be willing to pay you.
Dan, I just want to know what day is that the Great Clips day, so I can kind of
show up at the one in the
the
Atlanta. Yes, because I'm sure he's going to be going to all the different ones.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And it goes on, and I didn't see the rest of the episodes because there's a bunch of different episodes, but he talks about playing through the injury because he doesn't want Michael Penix to be the starting quarterback. You played the NFL. I get that. You never want to give up your spot. You want to do it for your team. There is some responsibility also of fulfilling your contract.
Yes.
Now, do I think that he's thinking to himself, well, I'm not going to get the other $80 million guaranteed, so I better continue to play? I don't think it went that deep at that point. He was already guaranteed $100 million. He is a competitor. He does want to win.
Absolutely.
But I get that portion of it. But this whole lead up and this look back and, well, we never would have left Minnesota if that was the case. As we said, Minnesota, I don't think really wanted him back.
Right.
And now he's trying to make himself the victim. And when you get $100 million guaranteed coming off of everything that you said, the Achilles injury and the age, sorry, don't feel bad for you.
Yeah, no, there's no sorry, no feeling sorry for the guy right now. I mean, obviously, like you said, we both said, I mean, he's made a lot of money in this league and he's played some really good football and played some down football. That's part of being a pro. But yeah, at this point, nobody wants to hear the sob story from Kirk Cousins at all.
Jason tweets in and says, don't forget Washington kind of dragged him along and had the RG3 deal in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like Kirk Cousins was a victim of circumstance there because he was brought in later. I don't envy the spot that he was in.
Yeah.
But in that situation, isn't RG3 the real victim because you drafted another quarterback in that same draft?
Yeah.
So, I get, if I'm Kirk Cousins and Washington isn't willing to pay him the contract that he wanted, he says, fine, I'm good enough. I'll just play under the franchise tag.
Yeah.
It's more beneficial for me to make you franchise tag me for the second time. I get the whole tenure in Washington. I don't think that there's just any point where I feel bad for him because I feel he's gamed the system enough. And if we want to talk about that rookie year, I feel RG3 was more of the victim in anything because now there's a quarterback there that may try to undermine what you're trying to do as the first overall pick or second overall pick.
Yeah, there's nothing. We said it. There's nothing to be sorry about, man. He was a fourth round pick. He's exceeded all expectations from that perspective alone, right? His play in Washington, very steady. I knew he was a guy that would have a chance there in Washington because of RG3's style of play at the time, where now, game plans, even with the Lamar Jackson now, even those things are more game plan specific for that type of quarterback, where when RG3 came in, it was not quite there yet, even though they knew they had that type of player teams weren't ready to go to that style of offense completely yet now and protect him in a way that was the way he was going to need it. Kirk Cousins, I applaud you for always being ready and being the guy that, even though you may not have been first, you had a bigger vision for yourself being that guy. We applaud you. Right now isn't the time to be the guy that you're trying to make us sorry for you. It's just not going to work.
Great point. Jason Stewart's our executive producer.
Let's talk about that last part, right? Because he agreed to do this show. He's getting paid to do the show. And I'm guessing, Kerry, you know more about this than we do, but like when a reality show approaches you, and by the way, they skipped last season because they couldn't get enough quarterbacks to do this show.
Right.
Part of the sales pitch probably from the agent is, Kirk, let's start thinking about the next career. Let's further procure your public image
For sure.
for your next career, right? So he volunteers to do this. He's getting paid to do it.
Yep.
He doesn't need to say this on camera. Like, this is something that you might admit to your immediate family members or other quarterbacks that have 8 figures in the bank. Like, but you just don't admit this on a reality show where you're doing it for all optics, presumably, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just going to say you don't admit it unless you're trying to spin the story your way and using it as that platform for that. So, yeah, you're right. That would be something that you're like, all right, maybe we should have stayed in Minnesota. But to sit down knowing that you're going to be asked that question, because this question was asked months prior. It's not like a live interview done on SportsCenter or Fox Sports 1 or anything like that.
Right.
It's a prepackaged piece. You know exactly what you're saying in that point.
100% strategic, right? I mean, now it is. He's on the back nine, right? It's a chance for him to, gain some sympathy, gain a different perspective about what his intentions were when he headed to Atlanta. And that's all. It's just a spin job.
Yeah. He's not only on the back nine, he's caddying for Michael Penix Jr. now, and he's telling him the wrong clubs to use, which could be a problem in Atlanta because it's just what a mess. Now we're we're less than a month from training camp. We know that he's unhappy. They were unable to deal him. Does this aid in that effect? I didn't watch the first full quarterback series either. Cousins was a part of that again, as you said.
Yep.
But also during that, wasn't Marcus Mariota a part of that, and then he ends up getting benched? So you're seeing these different aspects of it, and I'm sure quarterback is thinking, well, hey, we just had Cousins. We'll see if he wants to come back, to both your point. Yeah, let's do it. Go right ahead. It shows a different, hey, I'm trying to come back from injury. But in Kirk Cousins' mind, it's watch my comeback. We're going to have it documented, and it's going to be amazing. Like, watch this thing, because the cameras were rolling before they even drafted Michael Penix Jr. on this docuseries. This was happening during the free agency or after the free agency period in March of 2024.
Is he the most expensive backup quarterback ever? I think that's
Yeah, I would say so. Right? Yes, and shame on the Falcons for giving. Like, I don't agree with the Falcons making the move that they did, even though it worked out for them in the end. Like, they covered their bases, but I felt that they were ready to win last year, which is why they wanted Kirk Cousins to come in.
Right.
And it didn't end up happening. I think Atlanta's in a really good spot in 2025. There's not a lot of expectations, and I actually feel they're going to be really good offensively. I think they have a really good offensive line, which, by the way, then if they do have success, guess whose story gets hurt? Kirk Cousins.
For sure. Because
of what he didn't do last year. And I'm curious to see the rest of the piece and him talking about his injury. I get that gamesmanship with a player, but no player has maneuvered more in their NFL career to maximize their dollars than Kirk Cousins, including, again, taking the $100 million guaranteed from the Atlanta Falcons. So don't cry about not going back to Minnesota.
There you go.
As that Vikings whole deal was playing out in the year that he was injured, because they started off slow and then they played a really good stretch of football, and then he got injured in that game against Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Their season ended up taking a turn because of what they were trying to find out at quarterback. But I remember sitting in the studio and finding out that they were starting Jaron Hall for that game against the Packers on Sunday night. And that told me, because they had started Jaron Hall earlier in the season in a game against the Falcons, which at that time, midseason, not a big deal, but the Vikings were teetering on the playoffs. They could have possibly gotten in, and playing Green Bay, your rival, at home on Sunday Night Football. And they started Jaron Hall, and he was atrocious. And Green Bay destroyed Minnesota. I think 33-10 was the final. So at that point, Minnesota knew that they weren't going to have Jaron Hall be their future quarterback. And as ridiculous as it sounds when I'm saying that, think of what would have happened if Minnesota would have won 33-10. They would have said, we have our quarterback of the future. This is our guy. And I think it completely backfired on them. So then when the offseason comes around and they're talking about Kirk Cousins, they are thinking about taking a quarterback early. And even though Cousins mentioned it in that clip, he could have stayed there. It would have been the same exact situation. The only difference, he wouldn't have got $100 million guaranteed.
Exactly.
And that's why he ultimately went to Atlanta.